In this video, I'll demonstrate how to use the batch import feature, our Excel add-in, and also how to download it. So to download this add-in, what you're going to want to do is download it from our program, which you'll be able to access in a free trial or paid version, and then you're going to install it into Excel, and then you'll be able to access the program through Excel. So start by clicking User Customization, and then in the left menu, click Upload via ECOUNT Excel Upload. Then you can just go ahead and click download the ECOUNT Excel Uploader add-in here. And this will automatically start the download. You're going to want to save it and then run it. And then what it's going to do is it's automatically going to start installing itself. Just follow the installer instructions. And then what you're going to do is then you're going to open up Excel and you'll see that there's an ECOUNT 4.0 tab at the top. Then what you're going to do is click Login, enter in your company code and user ID. You can save your code and ID by selecting the Save Code ID option and then click Login. Then you're going to see at the very top these buttons illuminate. You have the option of using this add-in for importing data into the program or exporting data. So if you want to do an export, which is essentially a backup, you're going to go to the backup section here, and then you can select basic information, which is your customer and vendor information, your item profiles, your chart of accounts, and then the accounting, inventory, and groupware data. This is going to export actual data that you've entered into the program. So for instance, if you click on the accounting tab, you'll see that there's a voucher. So this is going to just simply export all vouchers in the program. So it'll include invoices, expenses, everything. Then we also have the purchases and sales, which is essentially your invoices and your general journal entries. For the inventory options, we have sales transactions, purchases, your bill of materials, your goods receipts, internal use, and then the defect and disassemble. This is related to our product defect menus, inventory adjustments, slips, and then physical inventory. The difference between these two slips is the inventory adjustment slip is when it's actually been applied to the program, and your physical inventory is just when you're still in the counting process. So the physical inventory is basically your step 1 and inventory adjustment is step 2. The groupware, this will export your schedule, e-approval, and your boards. So when you do the backup, you're going to select the data type that you want. So for instance, let's select the voucher option. Then what you're going to do is select your date range. The max date range is a year, and then click search. And what will happen is that it'll export an Excel template with all of your information. If you want to import data to the program, what you're going to do is select the tab that you want to work with. So if you're just getting started with the program, you're going to be dealing with mostly the Register Basic tab. This is going to allow you to enter in your customers and vendors, your CS user IDs, projects, PICs, which is person in charge, your locations, your items, your item groups, management fields, price level codes and settings, and then also your chart of accounts. The one thing to keep in mind within the program is that this particular add-in, we have two separate spreadsheets if you're registering data and if you're modifying data. So you'll notice that there's a modify option here for customer and vendor data. The difference is that if you select the register customer vendor code, if you enter in a duplicate, it's going to send back an error message that that code already exists. So when you're entering in data, there's no ability to overwrite if you've selected a register template. There's no option to erase data that's currently in the program. If you select the modify, what it's going to do is that you're going to have the option of narrowing down your search results. Click on the search button, and then it's going to pull all of your existing information that you already have within the program. And then what you'll do is you'll simply make changes to the fields, and then you can re-import it. So now I'll discuss how to use the actual spreadsheets themselves. These spreadsheets here, so what I selected was the customer vendor spreadsheet. This information is based off of the General tab in your customer vendor setup screen. So if you want different information to appear on this particular template, modify it within the program and then re-update your template. So what you'll do is you'll essentially just log out and then log back in and close this template down, and it'll update that template. So the bolded fields within the Excel spreadsheet are required fields. If you hover over them, you'll notice that there's a red triangle in the upper right corner of the fields. If you hover over them, it'll give you more information on what sort of information goes into that field. So it'll give you a more detailed description, and it'll tell you that it's a required field. So in the instance of this particular, the customer vendor code field, this tells you that it's a max of 30 characters because of the 30 in parentheses. However, if you go over to the type field, you'll notice that there are 2 characters. So if you hover over that, it'll tell you to enter either a 01 for a business, 02 for a contractor, and 03 for an international contractor. This is very important because this tells the program which selection option you're choosing. You'll notice that this field appears here in the customer vendor setup, the modifying your chart of accounts, and also a lot in the item setup. So for instance, I'm going to enter in a new customer. One thing to keep in mind is that anytime you're entering in a code field, there's no option for spaces. So if you enter in a space here, you're going to get an error message. So you can use a dash, a period, or an underscore. You can use a combination of numbers and letters as well. So this is going to be a regular business, and the name field, this does support spaces. So let's say that this is the only information that I want to enter in for this particular customer. Then what you're going to do is go ahead and click Data Upload at the very top of the screen, and it'll import it into the program. What you'll see is you'll get a result with whether or not it was successful or not. If it wasn't successful, it'll tell you how many lines were not successful, and then it'll tell you the reason. So if you get, for instance, an item code error, that will alert you that there's a problem with the item code. One thing to keep in mind too is that, let's say you've done a first round of imports on your products or your customers, then you want to go back and add in some new people. Just go ahead, and as long as this session has remained active, go ahead and just enter in your new customers. So this type field is going to remain the same because it's still the same type of business. And then just go ahead and pick up and click Data Upload, and the program will automatically pick up where you left off, and you can just keep importing data into the program. If you have any error messages, so for instance, I'm going to test this. It'll tell you that there was an error in the type 2 field. So if I go back and now enter this in, and then click Data Upload one more time, it'll tell me again that there was a failure because there's a blank space in the customer vendor code. So if you have those errors, just keep retrying until you figure out, until you've fixed all the errors, click Data Upload, and then it'll just fix everything that had the error. So for instance, if you're importing 1,000 line items and they're intermittently spaced, just go ahead and fix the ones that are incorrect, and then click this Data Upload again. It'll recognize which ones weren't successfully imported, and it'll only attempt to import those. If you're doing a modify spreadsheet, this will just re-import everything that's currently on the spreadsheet. But again, you can just continue making changes on this information. If you need more information on how to use this, you can click on the Help button here, and this will download the manual that we have regarding this add-in. If you're using this add-in to import new information into the program, like new sales or new purchases or purchase orders, you're going to want to use these other buttons here. So for the inventory, you're going to see all of those transactions related to the new slips inventory option. The program separates the domestic versus international transactions because our program does support multiple currencies. So if this is something that occurred in a foreign currency, you're going to want to select the international version to be able to enter in the extra foreign currency field. So for instance, if we're doing a domestic sale, this will load based off of your input screen within the program. So it's best to customize all of your input screens before you start importing data here, otherwise you'll potentially miss out on certain information. So again, these fields are bolded for the information that you have to enter in. So a customer vendor code is required, a location code is required. Otherwise, the program doesn't require much information. You'll need an item code and a quantity. One thing to keep in mind is that if you don't enter in a price and then a pre-tax amount, it's not going to import that information into the program. So the program will only import what's currently on the spreadsheet. So that concludes our video on the Excel add-in for batch imports. Thank you.